As virtual pilots flying for virtual airlines, we must make important decisions in our pre-flight planning. Sometimes the weather can change quickly and dramatically. As in real life, pilots must make weather decisions based on real-time information. Sometimes a flight plan diversion is called for. This quick change of flight plan to either go around bad weather or delay the flight happens every day. This is a presentation by Captain Johan Baloghy of Alliance Airways, who at the last minute had to make a diversion in his flight plan to avoid bad weather over the Carpathian Mountain. Our flight will start from LRCL, Cluj-Napoca, Romania, to the Alliance hub at EDDM, Munich, in a Gulfstream 500 with Captain Johan Baloghy in the first seat. Captain Baloghy has made his initial flight plan with a planned departure from runway 26. But after checking the latest TAF, Captain Baloghy discovers the unexpected deterioration of weather conditions over the West Carpathian Mountains. After obtaining a new clearance from ATC and making the necessary route changes, Captain Baloghy had decided to fly around the West Carpathian Mountains, ensuring passenger and aircraft safety. After takeoff, Captain Baloghy turns his aircraft to a southerly direction for 60 nautical miles and climbs to 26,000 feet. He now turns to a new heading of 287 to intercept the Daggett waypoint. At our present altitude of 26,000 feet, we continue at a safe distance over the clouds. According to the FAA recommendation, Captain Baloghy followed the PPP rules: perceive, process, and perform, as described in the implementation of risk management rules, which states, it is the pilot's decision to change ground or in-flight update decisions, to leave the existing flight plans accordingly to the given current weather situation. Safety has the top priority. Deviate or delaying, if necessary, must be taken into account, and adequately briefing the passenger about the situation. Of course, all changes are to be executed without violating regulations. Clearance with tower controllers is always necessary. The other aspect is the general weather flight planning before takeoff, checking all possible resources about crucial influences such as turbulence, visibility, aircraft performance, and the safe altitude planning. And last but not least, consider the endurance capabilities of the aircraft. In case of unexpected bad weather situations, increase your fuel reserve to reflect a 2-hour window if you decide to go on. Captain Baloghy is now turning his aircraft towards the Daggett waypoint to avoid the deteriorating weather situation and will be able to proceed safely. Flying to Daggett, speed 250 knots at altitude 31,300 feet. Heading is 279, 80% engine thrust. We are now arriving at the Daggett waypoint. Leaving the Daggett waypoint, speed Mach 80, altitude 35,950 feet, heading 292, 80% engine thrust, flying towards the west with sunset in the foreground. You're now flying to Gila. Speed Mach 80, ground speed is 478 knots, true airspeed is 472 knots. We're at altitude 36,140 feet. Heading is 297. We have a wind coming from the northeast at 58 degrees at 11 knots. We are now viewing the J.A.G flight tracking system located on the Alliance Airways homepage. We are above Hungary after Budapest. Flying towards the airspace of Austria, avoiding the bad weather over the mountains, the beautiful landscape in the background. After receiving all possible weather-related information and receiving ATC clearance, our captain finds a nice open window in the clouds. Captain Baloghy now starts analyzing the transition procedure chart to EDDM. As Captain Baloghy starts his descent to Almaty, his aircraft speed is 240 knots, his ground speed is 293 knots, altitude is 18,230 feet with a heading of 273 degrees. Our entry to the transition procedure is Elmug, very close to Napsa. A very impressionistic sight approaching the transition zone. Shortly before Napsa, slowing the aircraft down with speed brakes. We're now approaching Elmug, so we have to slow the aircraft down with speed brakes. Speed is 230 knots, ground speed 244 knots, true airspeed is 250 knots, altitude 8,520 feet, heading 276 degrees, 20% engine thrust. We are now making the transition after leaving the entry point Elmug. Turning left, heading 269 into the final approach to Guldig waypoint. Crossing Guldig with the localizer and glide slope on. For EDDM ILS 26 right, 108.7. The final approach in perfect flying conditions. Speed 134 knots, ground speed 134 knots, true airspeed 141 knots, altitude 3,870 feet, heading 264, 45% engine thrust, full flaps and landing gear down. As we continue the final approach, our glide slope and localizer are locked in. Adjusting the barometric pressure to the current value of 30.23 inches Hg. Final approach is in sight. Our aircraft conditions are as follows. Speed 130 knots, ground speed 127 knots, true airspeed 133, and we're 450 feet above the ground. Our heading is 262, we have 40% engine thrust, the wind is coming from the west at 260 degrees at 3 miles per hour. We have full flaps and landing gears down. Captain Baloghy has landed with all passengers and crew safe. We are now proceeding to taxi over to the gate. And finally, we are parked at the gate at EDDM Munich. Sending XA cars pre-up to the Alliance Airways headquarters. On behalf of Captain Johann Baloghy and myself, Barry Pearl, we thank you for watching this Alliance Airways flight from Cluj-Napoca, Romania to Munich, Germany.